Hey guys, on this episode of Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast, we're doing a little different episode as I got to sit down and hash with Dr. Pete Camiolo for about 30 minutes on helping more people access chiropractic and the message of chiropractic and how that transforms people's lives and our unique position in this time and place in healthcare and in life care right now, the opportunities we have. So I recorded this episode just chatting with Pete because he's actually coming up to an event we're putting on here in Wisconsin later this spring. But I think it's of value for everyone to listen to and just hear what's on Pete's heart and helping more chiropractors help more people and how we do that and how we're positioned well in the healthcare and the true healthcare movement of making America healthy again. So I hope you enjoy this episode as it's a little bit different, and we'll see you on the next one. Hello, and welcome to Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. This podcast is dedicated to chiropractors who are in the seasons of launching and building their practice. Join myself, Dr. Lona, and my co-host, Dr. Bobby, as we have conversations each week as it relates to building the practice of your dreams. And remember, you can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. We're here to lead you on the way. All right, you guys, I'm super excited to have this conversation. One of my mentors for the last 5 or 6 years that I get to speak to every couple of weeks is my next interview here. And some of you know him and some of you don't. So I have Dr. Pete Camiolo here with me tonight. And I'm really honored too, because he's going to be coming up to visit us in Wisconsin later this year. Yes, we'll be so excited to have him up here at our event and sharing with our community. And I know he's super passionate, has powerful messages around why chiropractic is such an important piece of the equation for any family. And so, Pete, I just wanted to kind of start with your story. Like, how did you become someone who was so convicted around healing and innate healing, healing from above down, inside out, and just kind of like walk us through where you began with this, if you don't mind.
Well, first of all, it's an honor to be here. I'm really looking forward to the event coming up in the spring, and thank you for thinking of me and inviting me and your inspiration of actually doing this, because I know this is a kind of like a child you're birthing, like this idea, and to be able to be a part of it and to be a part of all the others that are going to be contributing and those are going to be attending, it's going to be special. So, it's an honor for me because, what inspires me is people who are inspired and taking action. And that's you, and that's who you are, Doc. So thank you for all that you do to help inspire my colleagues as chiropractors. You've just done incredible work. When I first learned about the on-site and the school-based work that you were doing, it just really inspired me tremendously. I think like many chiropractors who, I was a chiropractor for the sports team and was on the sidelines in the football games, and I had some little bit of things that I did here and there, but nothing to the level that you are doing, and what you guys have been able to accomplish in reaching the children. And that's a lot of my story, which is, long story short, just to take my story back to where it really, the genesis of my story was my brother, Jonathan, who really suffered tremendously at the hands of the traditional medical system for conditions that in a chiropractic office are easy street in a sense, once you get to the root cause, yet spent a decade of of his life actually being injured and harmed by the very system that was trying to help him. I'm
Mhm.
not saying they were intentionally harming him in any way, shape, or form. I'm saying when you're ignorant of the truth and you treat symptom and not cause, you're going to cause harm.
Mhm.
And so what happened was I watched that from my childhood. My best friend growing up, my brother was just a little bit older than me. We did everything together, and to see him suffer for my entire childhood to
Mhm.
the point where when he was 18 years old had to withdraw from his full academic scholarship to a major university to go save his life in Mexico and go
Mhm.
through a major detox program and have to go through this, and then finally learn about chiropractic through that, and then go to a chiropractor to have a chiropractor finally tell him, that his spine was an absolute mess,
Sure.
and it was, so my story of chiropractic wasn't necessarily a happy story to arrive. It was unfortunately like many of our patients and many of you who maybe are listening, your story of like, how did you end up going to the chiropractor? Like, Well, let me tell you, it wasn't great, and most people and that's why I love being a chiropractor, because people would come in and they would tell me, like, they would say, here's all my problems. And I was like, friend, go ahead and have a seat. Let me tell you how I got here, and then people were like, oh my gosh, like, I think there might be some hope for me. And I'm like, just
Right.
saying, there might be, and I think that's the thing that inspired me the most, was watching him go from exhausting what the system had to offer, only to discover a completely other system, what we call vitalism, chiropractic, where you look at, the spine and nervous system, you look at lifestyle. And it was like no one had addressed that before
Right.
professionally. No one was doing that. And again, this is back in the 80s and the 90s. So maybe more today than it was then. But at that time, it wasn't something that people were doing. So when we learned about chiropractic and we started going to the chiropractor doc, that's when everything changed for him. And then it began to change for me.
Sure. And that makes sense why you would be so convicted around like, I don't want another family to go through what we went through. So, with that said, because you had big practice and saw a lot of people, you know, do you think that for most people, it's the first step is figuring out that there is hope for them to like buy in on a different way of looking at what they're about to choose? Or what do you think holds a lot of people back from even entertaining that there might be more to learn about what's possible for them in a healing equation?
Well, I think you asked maybe two questions in that one question. So if
Yeah.
I want to answer both. So, and then make a statement before that, which is, we did have a big practice. We helped a lot of people, but we didn't help enough.
Mm,
And I still feel that to this day.
mm,
So that's number one. Number two, I felt my job when people walked into our doors was, number one, to make sure they felt that they belonged, that you were in the right place.
right.
And that was the first thing I always told them. And I told my team, if they saw them first, I said, listen, I don't care what they say. I don't care where they come from. I don't care if they were rude and all that stuff.
Mhm.
We'll handle all that. We'll figure that out. But we got to let them know they're in
Mhm.
the right place and they belong here.
Mhm.
Now, if they reject us and they leave, that's their choice. But we're going to try to do our very best to welcome them here. And that was our first position, was just, and then when they got to me or us as clinicians, I always shared, I said, listen, I'm never going to treat you based on your history, but based on your destiny.
Mhm.
In other words, I'm not treating you based on the past, but I'm going to take care of you based on the future. Instead of the what has happened, I'm going to treat you based on what can happen and what I believe will happen. And
Mm.
when I find myself in the midst of that tension, and someone who's actually willing to go here and actually journey with someone to this side,
Mhm.
rather than just, oh, we're going to do a deep history into your long family history. And while we would do that because it's the right thing to do and we really
Hear
need to
them.
do it,
Yep.
it's part of the process of doctor-patient relationship. But by no means was that was the end. That was just the beginning, just to say, let's find a common ground and see where you're at now. But let me share with you what we really do and what we see when we see you. And that was, I think, the thing that required the most courage. And here's why I would say that, because I had a lot of doctors, young doctors, who would come and train with us and me, and I found that if they didn't have a firm root in the principles that we teach, it was very hard for them to share that with people, to pull people here. They could meet with somebody right where they're at and connect with them where they're at, and that was basically as far ahead as we could go. Is just where we are.
Yep.
And there's so much power in just being fully present and meeting someone where they're at. But leading is actually meeting them where they're at and then showing them something that's brighter and possible, and then giving them a path to walk it out. But having the courage to say it's possible, knowing it's possible that things could go left or right and sideways, because these are two human beings, doctor, patient, and
Mhm.
life can happen, but I'm still gonna present it as an option.
Mm.
And to me, that's the key, is, are you willing to have do you have the courage to do that? Do you have the boldness to be able to say that? And there was a lot of people that look you, and look any chiropractor in the eye and be like, they're just trying to see, like, is this for real? Like, are you being honest? Like, Dr. Lona, you have that probably every day. We, and because when you walk with that level of, compassion, conviction, and certainty and belief, and and then you see the healings and the miracles and the stories over and over again. It just reminds us of what's true. And
Mhm.
it would, who am I to not tell people what's possible?
Right.
Who am I to play small and withhold that from somebody? If my brother didn't go to the chiropractor and they could have said, "Oh, you've been everywhere, all these doctors, whatever." Like, no, they're like, "Hey, this is what we do. We
Mhm.
help with the nervous system. If he has subluxation in his spine and we find that and we detect that that's there, we can correct that. It's going to unlock his body brain connection." That's how healing happens. And we'll see what happens.
Right.
And it wasn't like it'll cure this condition and that condition and that condition. They never told us, oh, it's going to fix all his conditions. It says, listen, he has migraines. Oh, he's got liver issues. Oh, he's got colon issues. Oh, he's got respiratory issues. Oh, he's got immune issues. Yeah, sounds like he's got a shut down nervous system,
Right.
you know. And so, I, to me, yes, it was, you give people hope,
Right.
um, and you give them responsibility, and the responsibility was shared,
Mhm.
right? Like, and then what happens is, Doc, is when people they start to see the transformation in their own life and they get hope. I always shared with them, now you got to give it. So it's not just enough for you to have your hope filled and
Mhm.
hope met, and now I'm good. It's like,
Mhm.
no, you have to share that hope with somebody else because
Right.
they don't have that.
Mhm.
And that was the rhythm of how things were and how things are. And so
I love
I
it.
think, I don't know that the third part of the question, you might have to restate that, but that's for sure the first part.
Well, and to what you just said there, I mean, anyone listening, you can feel the conviction and the certainty that comes off of you of like, I want that guy to be my doctor because I know he fully believes what he's telling, someone else to do and walking that himself. And, and hearing what you just said there, I'm like, do you think many times what's missing for many people in any office that they go to is that the doctor and the patient have not had that like connection fully, and that doctor is not sharing maybe with certainty that they believe that there is hope for the patient, whether we're talking about allopathic or what have you. It's like, generally speaking, when we've looked at Western medicine, a lot of times we're talking about worst case scenarios for things instead of best case, like what is possible here. Would you agree?
Well, go back to school. When they were teaching us how to prepare for our board exams, it was like worst case scenario. It was just be afraid to not harm and hurt somebody. We take an oath, first do no harm, the Hippocratic oath. Like, think about it. That's the essence of healthcare. So yeah, it's not surprising that many doctors don't necessarily come in being taught and empowered to do that. I'm thankful that I had people in my life that empowered me. You had people in your life that empowered you. Like, if you were left to your own devices, who knows what would have happened? And a lot of, unfortunately, even chiropractors, our own colleagues, our brothers and sisters who we care about and love, it's like they didn't maybe get that because the institution itself doesn't necessarily give that to us,
Right.
right? And so it was up to us to go to find out. I had my story, right? You have your story, but I have my story. But even knowing my own story going into chiropractic school, in many ways, it wasn't taken from me, but I forgot it in many ways. It became like an academic experience and passing board exams and trying to figure out what do I do after school. And it was like, and I forgot my origin story. I forgot
Mhm.
the thing. I had to go find it. I had to dig for that. I had to go get it. It took me like 2 years to find it, a year and a half probably. I had to go find it and pull it back, and then and then think about that. My own story I forgot. And
Right.
so, and I had to learn how to tell it. I had to learn how to use it in a way that was empowering to other people. And then my stories simply became their stories because then all the people have their stories. So now my list of stories is, I have one, my original story, but I have thousands of other
Right.
stories to pull from. And and that's the beautiful thing.
Well, I just interviewed Peter Kevorkian a couple weeks ago, and he was sharing like, at the crux of vitalism is this like we are studying what causes life to thrive, right? Like that is vitalism. And so much of what we've called healthcare is the opposite of that, is studying pathological outcomes in the body. So they're like, could not be night or day difference. And for anyone that's listening, if you're not a chiropractor listening, you're like, he broke it down like, do you brush your teeth because you're avoiding disease, or are you brushing your teeth because you're taking great care of yourself and you're, making
Mm,
sure that you want to take good care of yourself, right? Like the just even that shift in your mindset is the difference between like, hey, is my body going to thrive? Is there possibility for me versus like, oh, I'm just trying to avoid or I fear something, right? And I think
mm,
that's something that in healthcare, again, we've done such a poor job of speaking life over people, speaking healing over people, talking about the maybe oddball scenarios where something that was labeled like it not going to heal became, a quote unquote miracle, right? And that's, again, why don't we study those instead of the worst case scenarios more often? So, Pete, I know you're going to bring that when you come talk, but I also, in just thinking about that, when you think about the shift that we're in right now, because healthcare is definitely in a compression tank right now, what do you see happening? Like, what is the tone that you feel off of, the chiropractors? What is the tone you feel off of people that maybe don't know but are waking up to like, maybe I need to do something different for my health? Like, what are your thoughts there?
You know where how I want to answer this question, Doc? I've been thinking about this recently. We recently heard the news about RFK Jr. and him, getting confirmed and all that. And I've heard some of our colleagues say I never thought I would see something like this in our lifetime.
Mhm.
And I've been sat at tables with RFK. I've been in very small rooms with him, like you have. I mean, he has relationships with chiropractic and chiropractors, and we've been champions of him in his work over the last couple decades since he's been, really championing children's health.
Right.
And it just we were major supporters of that because we were aligned. So I think part of it right now is like all of us like just taking a breath and being like, wait, what is happening?
Right.
And I think there's value to just taking a breath and just saying, okay, because this is a huge thing.
Mhm.
Like when you have a big job ahead of cleaning up and correcting, and you have to be really intentional about it.
Right.
It's like the person who is broke on the street, a bum, wins the lottery. They have millions of dollars, and then they squat a year later, like, where is that guy? And they're like back out on the street. What happened? They never had what it took to steward that which they were entrusted with. We talk about the law of dominion, which is demonstrating the capacity to manage that which you've been entrusted with. And so this is how I feel about chiropractic. I look at my brothers and sisters across the board and I look in their eyes on a daily basis like you. And I look them in the eyes and that's what I think. I'm like, and we ask simple questions like if we were to double the amount of people coming in your practice, what would break? Can you handle it? Because the reality is, if what would happen if we really were able to serve humanity the way that we really desire? Like, for example, if all of a sudden every school around the nation called and said, we need a chiropractor on site to help us with all of our children. We have the funding, we have everything we need. We have the space with facilities. We just need doctors. We just need people that are willing and ready to do it. We would be hard pressed
Oh, very
be
hard.
able to fulfill on that.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Lona, I think that, we're in a position right now where we all have to take a good hard look at ourselves and ask ourselves, what can we like what else do I need to do and who do I need to become in this next season? Because
Mm-hmm.
who I've been and how I've been playing has just been preparing me for this moment.
Mm-hmm.
But who I'm going to be is probably going to look different than what I've been.
Right.
And that's the leader's question they ask themselves. They ask themselves, who do I need to become? In other words, I'm going to walk into this unknown thing that's ahead of me that's going to require a version of me that I am not yet, but I will become as I walk it out into this new. And so I'm thrilled because a guy like RFK was made to wait for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Chiropractors have had to wait for 130 years. Everything has been this waiting game for us. And so I hope that we've learned a lot of lessons along the way that we can bring in to how do we do this well? How do we collaborate with the established model that's already there? How do we work with and through that and still and then rise up and into our position that we need to be in I
Mhm.
think we can do it in a way that's respectful,
Yep.
that's honoring, but also that's truthful.
Hmm.
And we really keep the forefront of everything, the individual, the patient, who
Hmm.
we've been called to serve, and and the outcomes that people can get. So I'm excited for the word excited, I don't think is the word I'm looking for. Uh, I am excited about what's happened, but in the exact same time, I'm also like pressed for the weight of it. And I'm like, when you're given something heavy, like a weight of the responsibility that can come, are we ready? We collectively, as a profession,
Right.
are we ready? I think there are individuals who are ready. I think there's small pockets of readiness, but as a profession, nationwide, worldwide, I don't feel that we are. And so we have to work really hard. We have the next 4 years to really put ours, and hopefully we get into a position where it's not just the next 4 years, it's the next 40 years, and we can
Right.
spend the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years really getting healthcare where it needs to be and restoring the health of humanity and changing the terrible, because think about how long it took for the statistics to get as bad. 1980s, 90s, 2000. Now we have what percent of kids chronically sick,
Right.
taking medications on antidepressants. It's like it took 20, 30, 40, 50 years for it to deteriorate. It's going to take us some time to regenerate.
Right.
Not as long, I don't think, but it's going to take also a lot of collaboration between a lot of people and organizations to be able to do that. And I believe chiropractic and chiropractors, we are in the center
Hmm.
in the role because of the role of vitalism that it has. Like you said, instead of, you know, treating the symptom and 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 looking at it from that perspective, actually speaking into what's possible. Like we're not just going to get you out of pain. Like we want you to fully express your health. That's a completely different way to show up to an appointment. Like, no, I'm just here to get adjusted, so I'm expressing my full health.
Hmm.
Oh, so you're not going to come in and complain about X, Y, or Z today? No, I have been having an amazing day, and I'm just here to continue to optimize and express my fullest level of health.
Right.
Wow. What if we had a world full of people like that? Well, I believe that's possible.
Yep. And what if the narrative changed where it was like you learned how to listen to your body at a young age and you learned that like your body's actually your best doctor and it's the one always navigating your life with you, so it's showing you stuff through its symptoms. I mean, these things are just so foundational in like what has to change in our culture, I believe, for healthcare to really truly change, because that courage piece for the patient to have the courage to see their body from a different vantage point and then dare to trust someone that's not speaking the old narrative of what, you know, you fit in this box based on these symptoms, right? And that's there's a lot of great people within that system, but I think we can really, at this point, if you can't see the writing on the wall that, it's just not doing the job, you're not looking, So yeah.
When you shared that story with me about that, I think it was a hospital that ended up having to shut down in your area. And I thought about that. And I thought, I used to drive past the hospital every day on my way to my clinic. And I remember in my vision, because I had a vision of us actually taking over it,
Mhm.
taking over the hospital. And I still have that vision. I've actually had somebody share with me, a chiropractor, who's like, I heard you speak about that one time back in the day, and you showed a picture and you told us the story. And I was like, and they're like, I never forgot it. And I'm like, well, because I'm that's the mission I'm on right now. Like I just had to take the next step in my professional journey and but I'm like, I'm that is the direction that we're moving in. Like we have to keep moving towards that. Like there might be a hundred, whatever, I don't know how big hospitals are, square feet of space, like thousands and thousands of square feet of space, three, four, five floors. Like that all can be used to serve humanity. And I know we say close hospitals, but why not? Why just use? Let's just use them
Right.
for vitalism. Use them for the distribution of health care, real health care, right? And as a place that maybe people could go for all things, all those things that we're passionate about. So I do think that that's possible, and I think that when you said that that had happened, I thought,
Yeah.
but
Well, and
that's institution still sits there. Like that
it's
building is
empty
there,
right down the road right now.
empty.
Right. And there's talk, of like what's going to replace it because, the community is still in flux of trying to figure out because obviously the way that the hospital exited left a lot of turmoil in its midst. And at the same time, you see where like good ideas are sprouting up and people also frustrated like why would we just replace that system with another one that likely is going to end up in a similar scenario potentially. And in this last 6 months, as that has happened, as well as, some of my story that helped me look at healing differently was, getting to see the inside out of like the mental health hospitals because my mom was in there in and out for 6 or 7 years and it was horrific. And I remember thinking like, how does anyone get better here? Because
Mm,
it was so dismal. And, I think that's the other part is we look at like when we start to look at the whole person and the body being an intelligent and symptoms intelligent, how they show up, then we start to also beg the question that like the environment we put people in when they're quote unquote sick, right? Like, is this the environment that even has the potential to help this person heal?
right.
Um, and so I, like you, Pete, like I think like, in years ago when chiropractic was just being birthed, they had a sanitarium at Palmer College that was chiropractors adjusting people who had been labeled like, you know, that they would never get well. And they had all sorts of mental health labels, and they kept a medical doctor on staff to basically certify that this person came in with XYZ clinical labels in the mental health realm. And as they were checked and adjusted, a lot more frequently than maybe the average person would have been checked or adjusted, that these people were making recoveries. And so I'm like, my vision is like down the road, maybe there could be something like that again, where you have places that people who need hope and aren't, the typical people seeking chiropractic care because we haven't created that in our profession yet again, where chiropractic is used for everything and everybody knows that, oh, my body's having trouble or my mind body's having trouble. I'm going to go get checked by my chiropractor, right? But there could be these places that maybe they are hospitals and maybe they are mental health clinics, but they also have chiropractors on staff that are leading the way with like hope and healing and getting their nervous systems regulated again.
I love that you told that story. And I know that it hits close to home for you with your mom and walking through that. And I was an occupational therapist before I became a chiropractor. And then one of my rounds that I did was I'd spent 3 months in a lockdown unit, and it was really sad to me. But I didn't know the story, and I did the work that I did as a therapist during that time, but I didn't know the story about chiropractic and what happened back in the Palmer. So then I go to chiropractic school and I find out, I'm like, oh my gosh, imagine if I was in there, went back in there under a lockdown. I needed clearance to get in there, but I was able to go in there and actually just set up a table and adjust people.
Right.
Like, who knows what could have happened in that moment? Like, my mind wasn't even thinking that way at that time. Not that I couldn't have thought that way. I just didn't know to think that. I wasn't a chiropractor yet either, but and then now seeing full circle, if you think about the effect that an adjustment can have on somebody's mental health and happiness, it's like, whoa, like that changes the game for people to think so much bigger than, neck pain and back pain, which is typically the pigeonhole that chiropractors get put into, but it was never part of my story. It was never part of what I ever led my patients to believe. Not that they didn't come in with those things, nor did I address those things. Of course we did. But I always told them, I said, that's just like scratching the surface of what you're going to get here. That'll be a side benefit from everything else that you're going to get from what we do.
Yeah.
And that's the power of chiropractic.
That's good. All right, I know we need to wrap up. An analogy I think of when we talk about neck pain and back pain, which it is like the common reasons people generally think of a chiropractor to begin with, is like I say, if you use a chiropractic for just neck or back pain, it's kind of like buying a car just for the air conditioning, right? Like it works, you'll get cold, but there's a bunch of other things that car could do for you that would probably change your life if you could drive throughout the town and go visit places and people, it's like, yeah, it works for that. It's just that's not what it's actually it's it's potential. It's not what it's designed for. So anyway, Pete, I could talk to you forever, and I hope these visions we shared do come into fruition and hopefully the nearer future than we ever could have believed before. So that's pretty exciting. Any last thoughts or ideas you want to share in wrapping?
No, I'm just excited to come up, be a part of the event, and just be a part of the community that you serve, and just to be aligned with you and a part of the family of chiropractors who are committed to the mission that we have been, I believe, entrusted with.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you in April. Thanks, Pete. Thanks for listening to this episode of Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like the podcast, please subscribe, share with your friends, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, please click the links in the show notes to schedule a call.